I actually had to sit down and make a list. It's the easiest thing to do when something's bugging you about a movie. Put a pen to paper. Well, fingers to digital screen. But hey, that's more or less how this works out. So I was asked, how do I feel about Black Panther now that I've seen it twice? So I've got five big problems. Well, not really big problems. Well, they're problems that I have with Black Panther Wakanda Forever. And I don't really feel as though they're like controversial problems, but at the same time, this is my channel. I don't give a fuck. So, at the bottom of the list, we've got Atuma and Namora. Now, for Namor's like comic book origins, both of these characters play like a really big role because at any point in time, they're either working with him, betraying him, fighting alongside him, exiling him, welcoming him back. Like their role is to basically also be kind of sort of leaders in Atlantis, or I guess in the MCU it's Talokan. This movie did not do anything for their characters in any way, shape, or form. I felt as though both of the characters were basically henchmen, like henchman number one, henchman number two. Like what was outside of Atuma that we know he likes to fight. What else did we get about his character? Nothing. Like we didn't get to see him interacting with Namor like on the side, having his like own opinions in any way, shape, or form. Hey, we shouldn't do this. Hey, I think we should do this. None of that. Same thing with Namora. We only ended up getting her disagreement with him and her voicing her opinions at the end of the movie after he had already lost to Shuri, and she was like, what's going on here? Like, why did you surrender? Why did we yield? And blah 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 blah. And it's like, okay, so there's dissent amongst the ranks. Like people have their own opinions because up until that point, Namor is basically portrayed as essentially like their god. But these two were supposed to be like his left hand, right hand. Like I said, depending on the comic book, depending on the situation. So it's annoyed me a little bit. I understand that there wasn't enough time to make every single character shine, but when you really do look at Talokan, the only one who I would say has any type of depth, which is funny. No, I take that back. So Namor definitely has the biggest amount of depth. I would think that the next person, and in my opinion, I wanted to know more about was the maid that was, well, technically the maid slash assassin slash bodyguard that was watching Shuri and Riri, because she had a really interesting interaction with him where Shuri tries to save her, and then she's kind of hoping that Shuri will save her, but then they have to abandon her, and then she dies. But before she dies, she has like that talk with Namor where she looks at him and she says, will I survive, Kukulkan? And I don't remember if he said anything. I just remember that like that scene stuck with me. And then like she passed away and he closed her eyes. And then that was the rage where he was just like, we going to Wakanda and we fucking Wakanda up. I feel as though that woman in like 15 seconds had more depth to show just how much of this of the secret sauce in regards to Namor being a god that she was involved in, where she thought that maybe like he could heal her or save her from like death or something along those lines. That was more interesting than what was going on with like those two. Those two were just like big bruisers. Kind of sucks. Hoping that when they get brought back, we end up seeing more. The next one, Riri Williams, which, did y'all really like Riri Williams in this movie? Like, on the first viewing, I liked Riri. But then I realized in the second viewing that she's very much the MacGuffin. She's the thing that everybody's, the person, well, that is what a MacGuffin is. A MacGuffin is the thing that everyone is chasing after in a movie. Like, she's definitely the MacGuffin that everyone's chasing after. And her reaction to everything is to basically be the fish out of water. But let me ask you a question, and I always say this in regards to a character in a movie. If you were to remove that character from the movie, could the movie still function? Yes. Like, if you were to take Riri Williams out and introduce her in, let's say, Armor Wars, and be the one who kicks off the entire Armor War saga, that I think would have been a better fit for her character than in this movie. Because in Armor Wars, you can make the argument that Riri Williams was the one who cracked Tony Stark's Stark Tech code, and because she created her own armor, other people basically stole her ideas, which we see the government do in this movie, and applied it to creating their own armors all around the world. And it starts like a Stark Tech arms race, and it's basically Riri and Rhodey working together to get her schematics back and stop the armor wars that are currently happening or that are about to happen. But in this movie, you could have just said that like the United States government created this thing that allowed them to find vibranium because they were looking for it outside of Wakanda, or it was a joint effort between the Americans and the French to find vibranium outside of Wakanda, funded by Dr. Doom. I'm not gonna let that go. But for the most part, she was okay. Like, her introduction was decent. I just kept thinking that she could have had a better introduction in the MCU in the Armor Wars movie than in this movie, because I don't know, that's just something that basically stuck with me throughout the entire thing. I was just like, okay, she's decent. She doesn't add anything of value to the movie in any way, shape, or form. We got to see new Iron Man armor, but I mean, it instantaneously got taken away. Shuri was like, nah, you can't take that out Wakanda. That has to stay here. No Wakandan weapons, like outside of Wakanda, unless Wakanda's going to war with you. Then our weapons go outside of Wakanda. But other than that, our weapons stay inside Wakanda. Number 3, Namor's plans to get Wakanda on his side are fucking stupid. So when you first watch the movie, you're like, yeah, you gotta bully Wakanda into agreeing with you. But then it's like, you're a secret society. Well, you're not a secret society, you're a secret city. No one knows that you exist. When you attack that ship in the middle of the ocean and you kill everyone, the United States government and the French government think that it's Wakanda. Like, Namor's people seem to be like extremely good when it comes to tech, or they seem to know like how tech functions. So them thinking it's Wakanda is great. They're not looking for you. They don't think that it's you in any way, shape, or form. They think it's those guys over there. Namor going to Wakanda, revealing himself to Wakanda. Now, remind you, throughout this entire movie, the Americans and the French, they are the two superpowers that we know are watching every move that Wakanda makes. And then there are hinted at other superpowers that are also watching every move that Wakanda makes. Namor goes to Wakanda, makes a threat, forces Wakanda to make moves that don't make sense, brings more scrutiny from the international community onto Wakanda, goes back to Wakanda, attacks, blows up multiple city blocks, and forces Wakanda to move the bulk of its population from the city up into the mountains. All the while, these nations on the outside, they got their eyes on Wakanda, because we know that now they can hack Wakandan tech. So they definitely have access to Wakandan tech outside of Wakanda, that they've been able to hack it, reverse engineer it, and they can like place a bug in it. So they've most certainly understand that there's something happening over here. This war between Wakanda and Talokan, all that does is push Namor's people further and further into the spotlight of being revealed. Whereas if he had just sunk the boat, wiped out all trace of it in every way, shape, or form, where no one could ever find it, and had just went back to Talokan and chilled, no one would know. The Wakandans wouldn't know Talokan existed. No one would know Talokan existed in any way, shape, or form. But then the argument could be made that if he didn't do it, the United States government would have just went and captured Riri and had her build another one. But here's the problem. They stole Riri's tech. So would that have worked out in America's favor? Who knows? But I just found like a lot of holes in Namor's like theory, where he was just like, well, if I go to war with the surface world, I have to wipe you guys out first, because I can't have you join the other side. Yeah, but just how devastating would this war be for both of y'all? Like, if Wakanda was to bring its full military might to bear, like, don't get me wrong, Shuri definitely went out there with a big force, but it wasn't the full military might of Wakanda. It wasn't the Wakandan military that showed up at the end of like Infinity War. And it wasn't the Wakandan military that showed up at the end of Endgame. Like, she went there with a strike force to basically, the whole plan was to hold off long enough for them to capture Namor. If they went to war with the entirety of Wakanda, I think Wakanda would win. Like, especially with Shuri, once they figure out that all we gotta do is dry you motherfuckers out and like y'all aren't even a threat anymore, Wakanda would definitely fucking win. So that whole thing where he was like, we gotta wipe y'all out first, I was just like, that's a little bit sketchy. Like, I would just wipe all traces of that ship from the middle of the ocean, sink that bad boy, like, cause you're Namor, and Talokan has been underwater for how long? You know where the deepest crevices in the ocean are. Hide that ship, hide all that tech, probably pass a note to Wakanda, like, hey, there's this thing out here that they made in America, or shit, take it and just drop it off in the market at Wakanda, hop back in the water and roll. The plot would have been over in like 3 seconds. Can you imagine you're chilling at the Wakandan beach, relaxing, and all of a sudden you see a guy with wings on his feet and pointy fucking ears walk out of the ocean carrying a big machine. He drops it at your feet, tells you to call your princess, turns around, hop back in the water, and he's just gone. Shuri figured out what the fuck the machine was in like 3 fucking seconds. She'd definitely be able to backtrace this to figure out who the hell made it. It's Wakanda. They'll figure it out. Like, this, the more you think about the war, the more you're like, if it wasn't for the fact that it's Namor himself, and he's such an arrogant, like, vicious, flying off the handle, rageful asshole, you're like, this could have been diplomatically handled 100 times better. But hey, here we are. Moving on, we've got, my next one. Yes, more time spent explaining a hidden relationship between Wakanda and Talokan. So, Wakanda is a hidden nation. No one knew Wakanda existed because Wakanda had basically been hiding themselves for hundreds upon hundreds of years. Same thing with Talokan. Less amount of time, but they've been hiding themselves underwater for hundreds of years. When Namor first meets Shuri and Queen Ramonda, he says that my mother told me of a land far away where the people were free and they had never known being conquered. Your water is pristine. Your air, your air is magical. Who told you this? Who'd your mother meet? What Black Panther was on a mission in South America, in y'all area, that y'all met? What's the relationship between both of y'all? Who met who? Did someone from Talokan who was just like, I don't know, world tripping, swimming around the whole world, accidentally end up in Wakanda? Or did a Black Panther have a mission where he needed to hunt like a Spanish conquistador and he ended up in Mexico and then y'all just ended up meeting each other? Who met who here? I think the past scene, or there should have at least been a past scene that showed a Black Panther meeting someone from Namor's tribe, or Namor's mother or somebody from the tribe accidentally ending up in Wakanda. Something between the both of them should have happened, so that we could have got a bigger explainer as to how my man knew exactly where Wakanda was, like what river to take. Like, Namor just plugged Wakanda in the fucking waves and just swam there, like, directly. And I'm talking like directly enough that he walked out of the ocean next to both the queen and the princess. Like, he just plugged that shit into his phone and was like, okay, next right at Egypt, then a left at Ethiopia. Easy. We're gonna swim down the Nile, baby. Explain. Like, on the second viewing, I was like, I need to explain that, like, eventually, at some point in time. MCU tie-in comic book, MCU animated thing during What If, something to basically explain how Talokan knew that Wakanda existed and how Wakanda never knew that Talokan existed. Was there an agreement? Did a Black Panther meet Namor's mother? And Namor's mother was like, my people would prefer to stay hidden. So if you would, please do not tell your people about what happened here today. And the Black Panther was like, you got it. On the honor, on the glory and honor of Bast, I will tell no one of this. And my man went back to Wakanda and didn't tell a fucking soul. Explain that. Tell me that story. Because it is a story that I feel as though I would love to fucking hear. The very last one, the conflict resolution. I don't like how the fight wrapped up. That's just me. I really feel as though the fight should have wrapped up not with Queen Ramonda. The fight should have, like, Shuri man, I'll tell you one thing, yo. Like, Letitia Wright as Shuri, she was going through it during that fight. Namor, like, he was putting the works. He put the paws on her. And weird argument that people are having online, which is like, how did Shuri beat Namor? Using her head. She analyzed that man. Like, she had my man up in like a 3D projection walking around him like, okay, his body weight is 165 pounds. His lungs draw 70% more nutrients from the oxygen. His skin draws 97% more nitrogen and oxygen from the water. His strength is multiplied by blah 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 blah. The wings on his feet allow him to fly at like Mach 3 with a vector of 17. Like, she analyzed that man, and her and Riri were like, stick his ass in the microwave. Which is an oversimplification, but it's basically what they did. They built the giant microwave and they dried that man out, which was why he was so mad and trying to get the fuck out of the ship, because he was getting weaker and weaker. And if he had gotten super weak, she'd just be able to just walk him and just clawed him with the claws and called it a day. But he broke out and ended up having that boss ass fight on a beach, which is a brutal fucking fight. And I love how brutal that fucking fight is, because it's absolutely fantastic. Because it's two people trying to kill each other. Namor is trying to kill Shuri for his people. Shuri is trying to kill Namor for her. She is there for Scott Pilgrim reasons. Like my man Scott Pilgrim said, I'm not here to fight you for them. I'm here to fight you for me. Shuri was here to box, and I absolutely fucking love it. The thing that I do not like is basically having Shuri see Ramonda on the ancestral plane. I feel as though in that moment there should have been a callback. She's done beaten Namor, blown up the thing, his back is on fire, she done ripped off one of the wings from his feet, she is stalking that man with the claws out, ready to kill him. I feel as though in that moment, the same way that the movie basically started, having the AI tell Shuri that T'Challa, I almost called him Chadwick, that T'Challa no longer had a heartbeat, that he had passed, the same way the AI had told her that. I feel as though in that moment, the AI should have said what was happening on the ship, that there are like 83% casualties and everyone is surrounded. And in that moment, it should have been a callback to Civil War, where the claws are out, she's about to kill Namor, and she retracts the claws and she goes, hatred has consumed us. Rage has consumed us. I will no longer allow it to consume me. That would have been a great callback to the legacy of Chadwick Boseman as the Black Panther and his initial introduction, and I would have fucking loved it. I'd have cried harder there than I did when she was burning the ancestral garments, because I'd have been in goddamn Marvel, y'all done here and fucked me up. But y'all didn't take that, like, y'all didn't take that route. Like, she saw Ramonda and was like, show him who you are. And I felt as though in that moment when Ramonda said, show him who you are, Killmonger should have popped up over Ramonda's shoulder and been like, yeah, kill his ass. Show him exactly who you are. Show him them panther claws. Run his shit. Because I was like, wrong choice. I understand what you're going for, because Ramonda was the person who died the most recently, and her death is what's basically weighing on Shuri at the moment. But for the most part, they should have went with Chadwick. They should have went with T'Challa, and the lesson that he learned being the lesson that Shuri learns, which is you cannot allow your emotions to basically control the decisions that you make, because when you do that, people die. And then that would have fit in better with M'Baku basically ending up on the throne, being the one to be the king who runs Wakanda and cares for its people, because she would have realized in that moment, because she let her emotions take charge, that she was unfit to rule because she was still young and had a lot to learn. But yeah, those are more or less my complaints about Black Panther. like I said, somebody asked me to like make this video after I had my second viewing, so here it is. There's probably not gonna be any fucking editing. Bye.